Alright guys, the trailers have been dropping recently, but it looks like Elden Ring Nightreign isn't getting any new content anytime soon. So instead of accepting reality, let's inhale some copium and imagine what year 2 could have looked like. Honestly, there's huge potential. So today, let's talk about everything Nightreign should have gotten in year 2. I generally love Elden Ring Nightreign. I had a really good time playing the game. It's one of those games that is really easy to jump into and play. You don't need to spend hours exploring or building a new character. You just queue up, start a run, and within minutes you're fighting enemies and bosses from Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and completely new Night Lord bosses created just for Nightreign. And that is exactly what made the game so fun for me. During its first year, we actually got a decent amount of content. We got brand new bosses as Night Lords, and later on their enhanced versions, which made those fights feel fresh again and gave experienced players another challenge. Then we got the Forsaken Hollow DLC, which in my opinion was exactly the kind of content the game needed. It added 2 new Night Lords with an enhanced version, and most importantly an entire new map from a new Shifting Earth event. Suddenly your runs felt different again because you were exploring new areas. We also got 2 more Nightfarers, which is always nice, although I still went back to playing Wilder and Guardian again, with the occasional Revenant pick, but Undertaker 2, it really depends on which Night Lord I had to face in the Deep of Night. Talking about Deep of Night, if you wanted even more replayability, there was Deep of Night. With higher difficulties and more randomness, it made every run feel more unpredictable. But eventually I reached Depth 5. I had experienced pretty much everything the game had to offer. At that point, I didn't quit because the gameplay wasn't fun anymore. I stopped because there simply wasn't anything new left to experience. So it got too samey, and playing other games is more interesting. Nightreign has an incredible foundation, but it feels like it was abandoned just when it could have become something even bigger. So let's open up our imagination, shall we? So let's start with what I think would have been the easiest and most realistic DLC they could have made for year 2. Just add more Elden Ring content. Seriously, why would you stop after the Forsaken Hollows? They already proved that taking more locations and enemies and ideas from the original game and turning them into a new Shifting Earth event works incredibly well. It made every run feel fresh again, and there's still so much they could have used from both the base game and Shadow of the Erdtree. To start with, they could add more of the gear from the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree. Maybe some of them would be overpowered, but honestly, who cares? Nightreign is supposed to be chaotic, especially with the Deep of Night. But if players become stronger, then simply make the new content more challenging to compensate, right? More weapon variety means more builds and more replayability, and it feels more new. But the biggest thing I would add is another massive shifting earth event. Instead of creating an entire new map, imagine replacing the entire top right section of the original map, because that hasn't really been there before. Everything you know would suddenly be transformed into a journey towards the Relic tree. The castle that normally sits in the middle of the map would instead become the entrance to a city inspired by Alphal. You traversed in the original Elden Ring going down the Relic tree. Put an entrance to a catacomb section to fill the top side, make a sewer system going down from the city to the bottom, reaching the Relic tree as well for the catacomb section, and on the right side make a section of an open area that looks like the ancient ruins of Raha from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. When you reach the Relic tree, you can find pathways going down from the branches like when you first reach the tree in the original Elden Ring. So now one route will take you through the ancient catacombs with traps and hidden rooms. Another route will lead you through the Scarlet Rot areas inspired by the ancient ruins of Ra. And in the middle, you will find the city inspired by Aphel with a sewer section. Then all paths would eventually connect to a massive open underground area in the far right of the map, where you find the Relic tree and go down to find the boss room. Of course, all these areas should be populated with the enemies from those locations, like the Clean Rot Knights, the soldiers you find in Alphal, the big and small scorpions, Kindred of Rot, the Rotted Tree Spirit of course, can't forget that one, the Rotted Erdtree Avatar, and all of the catacomb and sewer enemies and bosses can roam those sections too. And while we're at it, bring back the chariot traps from the catacombs. You can even ride one to reach a hidden chest, which can drop a legendary or something. If you really are bold, add a furnace giant on the right side of the ruins of Ra, just like in the Shadow of the Erdtree. Finally, after making your way through all of these areas, you would descend even further to reach the roots of the Relic tree, and that is where the Shifting Earth boss would be waiting. Not just Melania and Romina together. Think of it like the Ornstein and Smaug from Dark Souls. Both bosses you fight at the same time in their first phase, but whichever one you leave alive enters their second phase after the other dies. That means every run could play out differently. After defeating them, you would earn a Shifting Earth event buff based on whichever boss you defeated last. If Melania was the final boss standing, your character summons her phantom attacks that deal Scarlet Rot buildup. If Romina was the final boss standing, you would gain an automatic spell that casts her butterfly magic attack that spreads rot across enemies. Then, just like in the Forsaken Hollow DLC, when you break the crystal, a massive jumping pad would launch you back to the surface, sending you into the middle of Alphal, where the final night circle would take place. And that would be the new Shifting Earth event. I also think this DLC can easily introduce a brand new Nightfarer. My pick would be a character like Millicent from the original game. Her story already revolves around Scarlet Rot, so perfect link to the Shifting Earth event. And her prosthetic arm could create some really interesting abilities. She could fight with curved swords, using fast combos, fast mobility and rod-based skills that would perfectly fit with the theme of the expansion. And finally, they could make more Night Lords. We still don't have the enhanced versions of the Drek Lord. He deals rot, so getting an enhanced version for him would be fitting with this DLC. But we also could get an enhanced version of Holster, the final Night Lord, so there's plenty of room for more DLC content. If you want another idea, you can make a Shifting Earth event around the Frenzied Flame team and then have a new Night Lord based upon that team as well. You can also add a new Nightfare based on this team. The point I'm trying to make is there are still dozens of teams and bosses, locations, enemies and weapons from Elden Ring that could be adapted into Nightreign and make every run feel more new. I do understand they won't be adding like final bosses into the game like Consort or Dawn, but optional bosses could be added in for sure. Now let's talk about what is probably my biggest problem with Nightreign, the Relic system. I genuinely think this is one of the worst progression systems ever made, not because relics are a bad idea, but because it's almost completely random and most of that randomness is just inconvenience. Let's be honest, how many relics have you picked up that you instantly sold or never looked at again after you got them? Probably every one of them. The biggest issue is that there are simply way too many useless stat rolls. For example, things like Strength +1, Vigor +2 barely make any noticeable difference. If these attributes are going to exist, make them drop between like 3 or 5 or maybe a bit more so it scales way better, because 1, 2 and 3 barely does anything. Then there are relics that give you a skill, spell or an item at the start of the run. Some of them are really good, but the majority of them, they're really useless. So I would say just remove them all so you have a better chance of getting something that increases the overall damage from the stats, so you don't have to abuse the same skills or spells every time. Personally, I would remove a lot of these weak and overly specific effects entirely, instead of having relics that only increase throwing knife damage or pot damage. Combine them into something broader like items deal increased damage or the duration is longer and increase their effect. Then using items can be more viable and not Nightfarer Scholar locked. Same goes for the attribute bonuses. Rather than dozens of these tiny stats, it make them increase the overall HP, FP, stamina, physical damage or spell damage, incantation damage, similar to the relics you can find in Deep of Night or the boss relics. But my biggest criticism is the color system. Right now, the colors barely mean anything. Any relic can roll almost any stat. I don't see the difference, so there's no real reason to care whether you're using a red, blue, green or yellow relic. The colors only make inventory management more annoying, because the challenges you have a set amount of colors you can use, it's just there to be more inconvenient. Instead, every color should have its own identity. Red should, for example, focus on physical damage and skill damage, blue should focus on incantations and magic damage, green could specialize in survivability and defense, yellow could revolve around utility, status resistance or support effects. Doing it like this will make stats more divided between the colors, but make the bonuses then larger to compensate. You can go glass cannon of course, or full tank depending on which challenges you use, but wouldn't that be better and more fun than just everything being fucking useless? Right now, you just go full damage anyway because the rest doesn't matter. You can still have some shared bonus stats across different colors, but every relic would immediately have a clear direction in creating builds. What they can also do to fix the system is do relic infusion, but I found that a little quick and cheap, but better that than what we have now. Let's say if you've been grinding the game for relic drops or buying them, and finally you get almost a perfect relic, but one stat is useless. Instead of throwing it away, you can spend Merc to fuse relics together and slowly build the relics that are more useful. Because let's be honest, most players are sitting on a mountain of Merc with absolutely nothing meaningful to spend it on, other than pulling the relic slot machine over and over again, which I won't be doing. And I think that's why many players end up modding their relics anyway. Honestly, I don't even blame them. The system is way too random. Now let's talk about rewards, because I think this can be a good reason to keep more people interested in playing the game. The problem isn't Nightreign is difficult, the problem is that the rewards don't match the effort for the endgame. When you first defeated the Night Lord, it feels great. You unlocked a new relic, and it actually felt you've accomplished something so you can beat the next Night Lord. And same goes for the enhanced Night Lords. The first time you clear those, they are excited because you're working towards something unique and you will get a reward from it. But after that, you're mostly grinding for random relics and hoping the slot machine finally gives you something useful. Even in Deep of Night, where the difficulty becomes significantly higher, you're not really guaranteed better rewards on higher difficulties. You simply fight harder enemies for another chance at better random relics with a debuff on it now. And for me, that's not very satisfying. I think the game should reward mastery instead of luck. Every Night Lord drops a fixed relic the first time you defeated them. Then after that you can get a different relic roll of that Night Lord from beating the enhanced version, which is really a great progression. But what if you made it so that you can upgrade versions of that relic by adding challenges to unlock them? For example, defeat the boss 10 times, beat the boss without anyone dying, or even beat the boss without taking damage. It can be more different challenges, and it also works with the enhanced versions of the Night Lords. Every challenge could improve the relic or unlock a stronger version of it. Now players actually have something to grind for, and that becomes even more important in Deep of Night, because stronger relics makes it easier. Once you have reached depth 4 or 5, enemies can one-shot you. Unless you get extremely lucky with weapon bonuses and relic walls. I actually do like the weapon passive system, because even though it's random, you usually end up finding something useful during a run. The relic system doesn't work that way, because they have way more useless stats, so relics are not good. Some people might say, well, just get better at the game. And sure, skill should obviously matter, but Nightreign is also a multiplayer game, so you want as many players as possible to keep playing, and a rewarding progression system is one of the best ways to achieve that, so players don't feel discouraged when they want to try out higher difficulties. So you can grind for better relics and lesser difficulty content, and then use them to have an easier time in Deep of Night. Or you can just play Deep of Night and get better rewards over time to complete the boss challenges to get the reward. Another thing they could have improved is the cosmetics. Right now you can buy a couple of skins, some good fixed relics, but imagine if some of the coolest cosmetics were tied to actual challenges instead. For example, beat Holster with Wilder without getting hit or dying unlocks a unique epic Holster themed Wilder skin. That could be really good. They should also make the starting weapons match the skin as well, because why doesn't Guardian Solaris skin get his sun shield? That's a crime. The same goes for every other skin. So they could add more epic skins that can be unlocked by doing something challenging. Maybe even upgraded looks of a skin that are already in the game, like a glowing effect or a cool change for it. It's a fun way to reward players that hone their skill and still play the game up to this day. Now let's talk about what probably would be my dream DLC, and that's a Dark Souls Legacy expansion. And before anyone says, that would never happen, well, it's not like anything will happen, but let's move on. They've already did put Dark Souls stuff in there. Instead of adding only older bosses, make an entire Shifting Earth event based on a classic Dark Souls location, or even an entire new map. Imagine loading into a run and suddenly the map changes and you have a huge new location, the Iron Keep. There you will fight your way through lava-filled bridges, castles and towers while being attacked by the Yellow Knights, the Turtle Knights and other enemies from Dark Souls 2. And since the Smelter Demon is already in Nightreign, make him roam the area as a powerful field boss that players can choose to challenge for better rewards. You can expand this Shifting Earth event even further by bringing in content from the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC. Imagine fighting through these sections of Broom Tower within the Iron Keep before facing bosses like Sir Alone or the Fume Knight, surrounded by the enemies that made those areas so memorable and painful. Don't forget that too. Don't ever forget. But why stop there? Any of the Dark Souls games has just as many incredible locations that would fit perfectly into Nightreign. Imagine replacing part of the map with Lothric Castle. You fight through groups of Lothric Knights, Winged Knights, dragon perching on the walls, and dangerous rooftops before reaching the major boss encounter of the event. The Dancer is already part of Nightreign, so give another fan favorite some attention. Let Vort of the Burrell Valley become the centerpiece of his own event, adding the Burrell Valley in there, complete with the frozen streets and cathedral entrances, and his signature aggressive combat style would perfectly work in Nightreign. And of course, don't forget to put Pontiff Sullivan in there, he wouldn't like to be left out. Frick. Just like Dark Souls 3, Anor Londo is reused after Brawl Valley, but make it more like in Dark Souls 1. You will explore the giant cathedral, the rooftops and the massive halls while fighting the Silver Knights and the other classic enemies before reaching the unforgettable boss encounter Ornstein in Smaug. Of course, this DLC would be hard to develop than simply adding more Elden Ring content. The combat in Nightreign is much faster than the original Dark Souls games. Players move faster and have far more mobility than they did back then. That means many bosses couldn't simply be copied into Nightreign. They would need new mechanics, new attack patterns and adjustments that fit the speed of Elden Ring's gameplay. But they've already shown they can do exactly that. Look at Artorias. His fight was adapted while still feeling true to the original fight, proving that these classic bosses can be modernized without losing their identity. And that is why I think a Dark Souls Legacy DLC would be incredible. It would be a celebration of everything that made the Souls series so special, while giving Nightreign an almost endless amount of content to build upon. At the end of the day, it's a shame that Nightreign didn't get any more content. The foundation is already there, the gameplay is fantastic for me. The new Nightlord bosses fights are some of the best FromSoftware has designed, and the roguelike multiplayer gameplay is one of the coolest new ideas they introduced to expand their original genre. That's exactly why I wanted to make this video, to share my love for the game, because I think it could have been so much more. Imagine another Elden Ring expansion with new Shifting Earth events, new Night Lords, and new Nightfarers, and imagine a full Dark Souls Legacy DLC with classic locations and bosses reimagined for Nightreign. I know some of these ideas are ambitious and we probably will never see anything like them. FromSoftware is already busy with other projects, and right now there hasn't been any indication that a year 2 content is coming. Could they surprise us with a shadow drop someday? Maybe, I love to be wrong, but they were very forthcoming when they were releasing new content, so a shadow drop is less likely. They're working on Duskblood, which is like an extraction kind of game. I usually don't play games like that, but Nightreign was a good time, although it is a different genre. However, Duskblood is hard to buy because it's only on Nintendo Switch 2, which I don't have, so I most likely will skip the game because of that and wait until their next original genre game comes out, I suppose. And I really don't give a fuck about the Torrent Edition, like, who cares? Honestly, I think Nightreign could have been something huge for the years to come. Let me know what you think of Nightreign State down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like to support it and subscribe for more content like this one. I thank you for watching and I see you in the next one.